Good morning. I did a smart growth audit of Coon Rapids, Minnesota, and my name is Steve Porter. So Coon Rapids is a fairly large suburban community in the Northwest Metro, north of Minneapolis, that did have a population of over 61,000 in 2010, and population primarily grew between 1980 and 2000. At this point, there is some growth expected between 2010 and 2020 from the Met Council projections. And Coon Rapids is somewhat of an employment center as well, and there's a little bit more employment growth expected over the next 10 years than there is population growth. It takes about 25 minutes to get from Coon Rapids to downtown Minneapolis via the North Star commuter rail, and driving is just a little bit longer than that. So taking a look at existing land use and future land use maps, we get an idea of the ways that Coon Rapids is planning for growth and change. And excuse the future land use map, they did have all the parcels on there, so it's a little bit confusing when you look at this low density residential. It's not as yellow. But in any case, they are looking to redevelop some obsolete commercial areas, as well as do some infill development where they have existing vacant parcels. And you can see that on the future land use map. The reasons that they're doing that, one of the key reasons is that they want to add more multifamily housing because they do have an aging population. And another reason is they want to do something with commercial areas that aren't being used to their full extent right now. So in terms of the smart growth audit, I thought that Coon Rapids did fairly well in a lot of ways. They had a score of 58% based on my calculations. They met 45 out of the 78 goals I thought were relevant. And I said that the ports scored well, and that means the ports are preservation or renovation tracts. Those are the redevelopment districts that Coon Rapids identified, and that helped their overall score. And in terms of their other policies, they had a more mixed review. Looking at some individual categories of the audit, Coon Rapids did very, very well in terms of efficient infrastructure provision. They are a built-out community, and they're looking to have a little bit more development to make the best use of their existing sewer and water infrastructure. And they do support infill and redevelopment overall as a community. I did a little bit of evaluation on how much residential land they were making available for development by 2030, and I calculated that they could actually develop about 7,900 units on that land if it was at maximum allowable densities in their zoning code. But the Met Council projects that they only need 2,600 units of housing. So perhaps they have a little bit too much land zoned for residential right now. And then another good thing is that they do really emphasize mixed use in their port districts, their redevelopment areas. Once again, trying to use those obsolete commercial areas to do high density residential as well as mixed use development. And so I recommend in terms of this category that they really focus on redevelopment in terms of their future housing development. They don't necessarily need to develop in all of the vacant parcels that they have. You notice all those vacant parcels they have, they could potentially retain some of those as open space. In terms of housing and density, another category that I kind of grouped together, Coon Rapids is doing very, very well in a lot of respects for housing because they do have a lot of different housing options. They have quite a bit of affordable housing, and their policies really support that. In terms of density, there's only a couple of districts that actually have minimum densities, and a lot of the city is zoned low density residential, and they have fairly low maximum densities in those areas. So some recommendations in their subdivision regulations, I thought that they could allow for higher density in subdivisions. In addition, they could consider allowing accessory units because they do have an aging population who might be able to make use of those. In terms of environmental quality, I thought that their floodplain management policies were very strong. They are located along the Mississippi River, and they really recognize that that's an important area for them. They have an excellent park system, and they have an excellent parks master plan, although they don't have minimum open space ratios for their community. And in addition, they do allow conditional use permits for a number of different sustainable design concepts, such as earth-sheltered homes. But in terms of recommendations, they don't actually have any design guidelines for how you might build something like an earth-sheltered home in Coon Rapids. I don't know if they necessarily they want something that looks like this there. So it might be a good idea for them to have some design guidelines so that actually encourage something that would work well in the community. And in addition to that, they could consider having some specific air quality goals, because they do mention that as something they want to do, but they don't have any specific goals. Transportation and parking, multimodal transport system with the North Star light rail train, but however they do have a very hierarchical street system, and that is something that's very much ingrained in their policies. And in addition to that, they have pretty high parking minimums in residential areas. You need to have 3 spaces for every single residential house. So some recommendations, they could think about relaxing some of those parking regulations, and in addition requiring sidewalks in subdivisions. They don't require sidewalks except for on larger arterial and collector streets right now. And they might consider, in addition, in some divisions, allowing some skinnier local streets and having a little bit more of a grid in the community. So moving forward, I think that Coon Rapids needs to focus on several things. For one, promoting redevelopment, and they're already looking at doing that in their port districts. They might consider allowing some sort of subsidy for development in those areas and really emphasizing it there. In addition, going along with that, they should support some additional density in the community, either through redevelopment or through allowing subdivisions at 8 units per acre. And then they are doing a lot for environmental quality already, but continuing to strengthen some of their policies and regulations. And finally, just again, revisiting their parking and street policies that they have right now. So any questions?
Say more about ports.
Okay. What exactly do you want to hear about them? What they are? Like,
Yeah, what they are and what they and do they treat them as a special category for?
Yeah, they're a special zoning district, preservation or renovation tracts. That's just what they call them. Ports. So if you look in the zoning code, there's ports in the zoning code, and those allow mixed-use development. They allow densities of up to 30 units per acre. They have a minimum density of 7 units per acre, and so all the development in the ports is going to be pretty high density development. They're focused on multifamily home development and mixing that with commercial uses. They do have a master plan for several of their ports, and so they really have some pretty clear goals for these areas, and they want them to be these kind of mixed-use, smart growth communities in a lot of ways.
Do they have any guidelines for mixing at the building scale? Or is it just you can put mixed use here, but where?
So when I looked through their port master plans, it was primarily focused on having commercial right next to residential, and I didn't see as much about mixing at the building scale, but you could do that, it seemed, according to the regulations.
You said that Coon Rapids has a fair amount of jobs in the community. Could you elaborate more on the job to housing ratio, and do a lot of people who live in Coon Rapids work in Coon Rapids, or are they commuting to the cities?
So there's actually no analysis of jobs housing balance in the comprehensive plan. That wasn't an area that they were particularly strong on looking at, and I didn't look at any calculations myself of what those ratios were. It's partially a commuter community and partially an employment center, but I'm not sure exactly how that matches up.
Two questions. Did you say 7 dwelling units per acre?
Yeah, as a minimum density in ports.
Second question, does Coon Rapids have any core or center?
There's no identifiable center in Coon Rapids. I talked to the planning staff about this. They mentioned that Coon Rapids Boulevard is the area where they're trying to do some of those ports, those mixed-use districts, but there's no historic